Welcome to WTF Stories and Advice. I'm Caroline Cranshaw, and today we have someone you're really going to want to listen to. So his name is Nate McFarlane, and I found him on TikTok. You can find him under Edunates, which is EDU, and then Nates. You get it? Yeah, Edunates. And I've been following you for a little while, Nate, and you talk about finance and crypto and the world and what the fuck is happening in a way that is really great and so good that I reached out to you and asked you if you'd come on the podcast, and you did. So welcome.
Thank you very much. I like the fact you like my content.
I love your content. And so what interests me about you is, so you're talking about you talk a lot about the financial world and what's happening there, but you really also talk about politics and what the crazy shit that's happening, because it's something I've become utterly obsessed with. And I find so many people have no idea what's happening. And you explain it in such a succinct way. So right now you're living in Dubai. Tell us a little bit about your background and why we should listen to you.
Yeah. So I've been in Dubai almost 9 years. Prior to that, I was living in London. I was working at a technology startup, which is now pretty darn successful. So shoot me in the head for leaving that. But I've moved on to bigger and better things, so to speak. I came out here and worked in investment advisory pretty much the whole time I've been here. So 9 years in financial services, saw how the system works. Don't really like it, to be honest, for obvious reasons as we go on. And yeah, the last sort of 3 or so years, I've been working on projects to aid people, educate people in financial services, which has actually turned into me building a social site, which gives the ability for creators like ourselves to be able to educate people and then earn not just off their vertical of what they do, but off the other verticals that the viewers may purchase in, so that creators can actually earn a living. And I call it making the creator the stakeholder, which is obviously linked into the stakeholder capitalism that is supposedly coming through the World Economic Forum. So, but yeah, the main thing is I really, obviously in financial services for the last 9 years, I think the last sort of 3 years when I started on TikTok, it was actually helping people with debts, because there was lots of people in Dubai at the time were having debt issues, and I was very educated on the subject. So I worked in investment advisory, I worked in debt advisory as well, because I saw people needed to have the help and understanding of how the system worked, so on and so forth. So I got a lot of followers from that, but it evolved because once I started getting these followers, I had to do content every day on finance. And if you've been doing it for 3 years and you're doing a video every day, there's a lot going on that you need to talk about. But it basically became almost an obsession of mine to be able to constantly learn about what's going on in the world and in the financial services. And realistically, I'm reading a book every day, taking content on every day. And it just makes you this kind of book of knowledge that no other person in financial services would need to be. You don't, even if you're in the top of your career in financial services, that most people are just focused on making money. For me, it's actually more of a case of helping people. And all that's done is just made me become extremely knowledgeable in financial services. And through it, I've realized that we are going through one of the biggest, if not the biggest, change in financial history. And that, I believe, links to so many things that are going on in the world right now. So from going to helping people with debts to telling people where to invest and how the financial system works, it's moved on to, hang on, the financial system, in my opinion, in some capacity is going to collapse. And it's not just that, you're moving into an entirely different era, what I call the fourth industrial revolution, democratic type society, where things can potentially be far more efficient, but people need to understand what may occur because of that, and how that can either positively or negatively affect their lives.
Because, so for people that don't know, I think a good place to start maybe is the World Economic Forum, right? Because most people I talk to never really even heard of the World Economic Forum, or maybe just
Yeah.
they've heard of it. But how would you explain it?
Well, in a way, I quite like the idea of it because it's essentially it's a think tank. It's a think tank to be able to try and make the world, or it's at least publicized as a think tank, to be able to say this is how we can make the world a better place. That comes with great things and positive things and negative things. I think that the people that do know about the World Economic Forum now arguably have a negative way of thinking about it, because I think it's the way that people have a certain way of thinking and living right now, and no one likes change. I also think the message that is being portrayed by the World Economic Forum is not, it's not, they're not targeting your average man on the street and understanding the way that it can actually benefit them. And if they were targeting it in a different way, then it would be much more efficient. Essentially, the World Economic Forum is setting the principles of how the world can be in the next 50, 100, 200 years. Great, awesome, great. But how can that benefit me as your average Joe on the street? And their message, I think right now, you've got the leader, the owner, Klaus Schwab. His message is very, let's call it mainstream. And unfortunately, whether their views are positive, whether it does like great change, unfortunately, their angle is so fit into everything else that's going on in the world, where we smell so much BS left, right, and center of what's going on, that it immediately makes the World Economic Forum and Klaus Schwab stink of BS as well. That's the reality, right? If all you see in this changing environment is that shocking politicians, crazy things going on, the media, no one believes in the media. Anyone that sees me and sits there and watch BBC, CNN, CBS, and actually says, yes, I believe in the media, has not looked any further outside the box and looking at their TV. Obviously, things like TikTok and social channels and social media has really started to make other people think and look outside the box. And it doesn't take long for people to start questioning. And the moment they start questioning, algorithms on TikTok and YouTube are fantastic for giving you information to actually then start making you thinking, hang on a minute. No, the media is just playing to an agenda. Now, the problem with this is you've got this whole changing society now, the World Economic Forum links to. It means that the reality is, even if the World Economic Forum was doing something fantastic for the future of society, because we're going through this period in history and period in time where it's surrounded by BS and lies, all that people associate the World Economic Forum with right now is BS and lies. It's not, and for your average Joe on the street, there is nothing for him. He actually, all he sees is, oh no, you're going to try and take away my freedom. Okay, if you're going to take away my freedom, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. What's in it for me? So I think that whether it is, I personally believe it's key by the amount of politicians that are in place that are linked to the World Economic Forum, the amount of companies that are in place linked to it, and the way we're going through the societal change is occurring. It's going to happen in some capacity. It is. But their entire message is driven by, in my mind, they don't appeal to your main person on the street. If you're going to appeal to your main person on the street, your average Joe on the street, then great, but they don't. And because of that, they're going to experience great backlash. The argument here is, why don't you appeal to your main person in the street? If you've gone through this think tank, which if when you go through the World Economic Forum site and you look through the pages and pages, we're not talking 1, 2, 3, 10 pages here. We're talking hundreds, if not thousands of pages of a carefully planted plan to change the world over the next 10 years by 2030 and moving on forward. If you're that organized with everything, surely there should be a real point in here where you just explain to the people why it's going to be a better world, and actually start with being honest and transparent. If you want to build a better world, where'd you start? With all the problems with the financial system, with all the problems of the world that we've got going on, where would be a really good place to start? Be honest. Because right now, unfortunately, all I smell is BS. Right?
If they were honest, no one would go along with it, except for a few people.
Okay, and then that's the problem.
Mm.
Because if you're saying no one would go along with it, then what's wrong with it? And goes back to why you need to question it. Because for me, I'm a really chill guy. And I'm not the kind of guy that's aggressive, angry, annoyed. I'm not going to rant about things. No, I ask for something very, very simple. Tell me the truth, and I'll understand your way of thinking, and then I'll take my actions upon it. I'm very, very straightforward. I'll articulate my thoughts and feelings very well, so you can understand. It's to and fro. It's very simple. Okay, just be honest. If you can't be honest with me, and you just feed me BS, and on top feed other people BS, I'm not gonna play to that, am I? I'm not. Or at least I'm going to say, okay, fair enough. You're not going to be honest. Immediately that rings alarm bells in my head, right? But at the same time, whenever I'm looking at any given situation, I always look at two sides to the story, right? If you're going to want to transform the world and you're going to want to make it a better place, you're going to have to do things that some people aren't going to like. And if you look at the Principles of a Changing World Order by Ray Dalio, you go through these cycles where there are things that occur in this process of change where it to control an entire population, and that is when you are dealing with a small amount of people that are in this space. It's the reality. It's always been through society and through the world since the beginning of time. A small amount of people decide what the rest of the people do. Don't try to think that's any different, right? That's, I suppose, what we've created in this illusion of democracy. To me, democracy doesn't exist. It hasn't existed for a long time. Whether or not it existed in the beginning is, I think the principles of it are correct. And perhaps when you founded a certain country, a great example is the US, when you founded founding fathers with these right principles of what freedom, and this is the way we want it. But unfortunately, I think the easiest way to describe it is like you have a king. It doesn't necessarily mean that king's son is going to be a good king, right? It's the same principle. We get tainted through time because you can't rely on the next generation to be able to do right. And as over time, things occur. And in the instance of the capitalist world, obviously, companies become in control and the people at the top of the companies make the decisions. And we digress. But the point that I'm getting at here is, for me, if we are going through this changing world, great. I'm going to look at everything in context. But at the same time, if I feel that something doesn't add up, I am going to question it, and rightfully so. If I'm in a court of law and something doesn't add up, am I going to question you? Is it my right to question you? Absolutely it is. Right? All the principles that we've been taught upon is, if something doesn't add up, do you question it? Yes.
And the truth should defend itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And just innocent till proven guilty, the same principle, right? Okay. Same for me. I'm not going to say that someone is right or wrong. However, don't doubt me when a story that is being created doesn't add up, and then say to me, oh, you can't say that. I'm sorry, no, because clearly what you're saying, if you go and look around everywhere else, it's not correct. You can't play that to me. Don't insult my intelligence.
So for the people that don't know, because a lot of people, Klaus Schwab is the guy who started the World Economic Forum, and he went to Harvard, and he made friends with Henry Kissinger and was indoctrinated by him, and who had some very dodgy ideas anyways. A lot of people think he's a saint, but But then he's gone through and he's created this think tank, and then he's indoctrinated a lot of people who they've handpicked, all these people to be world leaders. Like, I'm in New Zealand, Jacinda Ardern.
He just says this, He says it.
All the world leaders.
The great thing about Klaus Schwab is you don't catch him lying. That's very interesting about the way he speaks. You look at politicians, they lie all the time. You can catch them out. With Klaus Schwab, he's very careful in what he says. He's actually very straight up. You can pick up the pieces, links. He says it is out there. He's covering himself, whether or not. I've not seen it yet, but it's articulated very well to say, for example, I did a video where he said, the world won't be completely safe if everyone isn't vaccinated. He's saying that for a reason. Absolutely. It's a warning. not. He's not saying why. He's not saying how. But it's all part of the agenda of where it needs to go. The one thing I listen to Klaus Schwab because I think he, in some capacity, is leading where the world is going. Like you just said there, these leaders, Trudeau, you're in New Zealand,
Macron.
right?
Jacinda Ardern.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
handpick them all, these young potentials, and they indoctrinate them with their ideas. And so, so when COVID hit, he decided this is an opportunity for a great reset and we can redo the whole world and make it better. And I mean, a few years ago, they came out with an ad, which I'm sure you've seen, where you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy.
Yep.
And that's
and before we move forward on that, there's nothing wrong with that's a way of thinking. Again, when we're having this conversation, we must accept, okay, that's a way of thinking. That's a theory. Let's not discount it because we ourselves have become indoctrinated in the existing society. That doesn't mean a new society is better or worse. I've got no issues with that. So let's, own nothing and be happy. Fine. I have not experienced that society. But
isn't that communism?
Yeah, well, again, that's like communism. We say, again, I'm going to play right down the middle. Yeah. We say like communism because we've lived in a capitalist-driven society. Part of the reason why communism didn't work was because they either gave out too much and therefore they then left them with supplies too less, or they gave out too little and people starved. The reality is now the arguments say we have the data to be able, or we have the technology and the data to be able to create a world where that wouldn't be an issue. So there are always two sides to things. I think the great thing about and why I've had success on my channel is that I'm looking at it straight down the middle. I'm not being biased to one side or another. The only thing I'm biased to is don't BS me. The moment you lie to me, the moment you give me BS, you are insulting my intelligence. The moment you insult my intelligence, I'm going to start to think, why are you lying to me? Why are you BSing me?
So what are they lying about? Tell me how are they lying to us?
Well,
and who? Because you said Klaus Schwab doesn't. You said Klaus Schwab doesn't lie. Klaus
Schwab is very, very careful the way he does. But okay, then let's see the people that have been selected, as you said, underneath him, the politicians. And actually, in the last 2 years, I now consider the job of a politician, the definition of professional lawyer.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that realistically is the case in this era. And that, again, in certain eras of politics, and again, I think this links back to you've got to read the book Principles of a Changing World Order by Ray Dalio.
Yeah, Brenda.
Because it links to a cycle. And another one is hard times create strong men. And actually, it's a really good structure. So we'll look at it from 1940 onwards. Hard times create strong men, 1940s. All right. Strong men create good times, 60s. Good times create weak men. So we had 60s, 90s, 2010s. Now weak men. Weak men create hard times, incoming. Hard times create strong men, right? So this whole period of time, we go through these cycles, and those cycles in politics at that point in time, when these resettings are happening, perhaps politicians are being more honest because we are in a cycle where they can be more honest, right? But now we're at the end of this cycle where we're in this changing world order where the West is in decline, right? Mm-hmm. The West is in decline. That's the United States, Europe, and associated nations like Australia and New Zealand, which link into that, the Western world, so to speak. Whilst that is in decline, they're doing whatever they can to hold on to power.
Yeah.
And if you're in decline and you're trying to hold on to power, you're going to start doing things which aren't necessarily considered by the book at that point in time. That's the reality. No, you don't need to BS me. I get it. I'm with you. It makes sense. But don't expect to get a positive response, right? I think the key thing is here, what would be great is the way that I'm expressing things. I would love to meet 1,000 Nathans right now, or 1,000 Nates for my nickname, 1,000 Nates right now, because if we just all stood in the same room, like, okay, cool, no worries, it's fine. We're all educated enough here to have a great conversation and understand we're not going to get annoyed or angry about it. But we're like, okay, but don't lie to me. Just tell me how it is. Okay, tell me how it is, and I'll understand why you're doing it. If you're going to say, as a government, I'm going to go and bomb this country tomorrow, I don't want war. I don't want bombs. And as the public don't want that. But you know what I would much rather you said is, this is what we've done. This is why we're doing it. And you know what? And I have to go, I already know it goes on in the world. I get it. I get that it already goes on in the world. I don't like it. It's not inside my principles. I don't want it to happen. But okay, rather than just lying and creating a society where the people at the top of our governments structure a way just lie about everything. And when we talk about lies, what you're saying here is we've proven it just from the period of time when, you need to take COVID happens, you need to take this vaccine, and then, and then because it's this effective, you need to do a booster, and it's this, and then, by now, actually, it doesn't work. You need another one. You're just changing the goalposts. And again, I go back to it. Don't insult my intelligence. And what all you're going to do is get backlash. But if you just come to me and say, actually, this is what we're going to do, and this is why we're doing it. Okay, I understand. The problem
why do you think they're doing it?
Why? Exactly. So why do you lie? Why don't you do it? So it therefore means that you don't believe the public are ready to accept what you are about to do. Right? Otherwise, you would tell me.
Yeah.
I used the example there of going and bombing a country because it's aggressive, right? It's something that no one wants to hear. If the majority of people, you're going to bomb this country, it's unacceptable. You don't do it. Yeah, I agree. You don't do it.
Yeah.
But I also understand how world politics works and why you're doing it. And I think the politicians know that. That's why they do it. The top of governments do. That's why they do it. Okay, so at least I've had the level of thinking to not get angry and annoyed and go and say, no, you can't do this. No, I took a step back. I've looked at and understood why someone does it. Someone walks up to you in the street and punches you in the face, right? There's a reason why they did it. Most people will just go back and punch the person back. For me, it's like, okay, I'm not necessarily going to do it unless I feel like my life personally is in danger, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go, okay, whoa. It's the same thing. It's the reaction to what you're getting. So if we look at this in a context where we say, okay, if you guys, the governments, are honest to me, okay, then I'm good. But if you're not being honest to me, which is clearly you're not, you're trying to hide something else beyond this, which we don't know. And that makes me curious because I'm a curious person. But for most people, it's more than curiosity, because for most people, it could mean anger. It could mean them getting into a position there for whatever reason that they don't like. A lot of people in this world, the majority in the Western world, and this is really key, are spoon-fed. We are spoon-fed. In the Western world, I'm sorry, you are spoon-fed. For me, I moved to the Middle East a few years back, obviously, and it gives you a different context of the way the world works. I've seen people that come from poorer countries that are just literally trying to feed their families by earning a small amount. And then I see them when they go back to their home and they're on a Zoom call with me and I'm looking at their home and I'm like, oh my God, imagine living there. The reality is 98% of the world lives in a situation which isn't as spoon-fed as the West is. And why has the West had that lifestyle? They've had that lifestyle because of the financial system, because we've lived on a society of debt for the last 50 years, which has spoon-fed the entire nation, for the entire West, all the nations of the West, because you sat there are people benefits getting in the UK, getting benefits of £1,500 a month, getting spoon-fed cash, which was like £1,500. You know what that could feed in a different country right now, what that could do for some people. And then someone's just fat in their bed, lazing around, doing nothing. And the reality is, you've created, in the West, you've created a bunch of lazy people who are entitled, feel like they're entitled to something, when I'm afraid, my friends, you are not. And you create a generation of weak people. This is where we go down the Andrew Tate side of things, right? I love the guy. I think he's great. Why? Not further. He does go up beyond the point, but the point he's getting across is the West is full of weak people.
Yeah.
It is. Why? Because society has built us that way. Because we've been handed and spoon-fed things. The question is then, and this is what moves us on, is what happens if you take that away? We realized you're already entitled, right? We already know that you get more than you should in comparison to the rest of the world. Right? So we go, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. We're in that phase.
So do you think they're going to take that away? Like in New Zealand, I think it's at least 15 to 20% of the population is on welfare.
Okay, this moves us on. Are they going to take it away, or are they just going to do it in a different way?
I think they're going to do universal basic income.
Yeah, because they have to. We look at half the jobs are going to be taken away through AI eventually. But and this all links back to central bank digital currencies, which is coming in through the financial system. So you see how we've gone through this conversation of the world changing and how the world works and people and how people think. And now we got back to the cusp of it, which is providing for a person and making sure that you can still sustain your people without getting them angry. Right? So, okay, so we've got that far. Now we say, okay, well, technology can now provide things which couldn't before. We explained at least an element with the communism, capitalism thing there. But okay, so we explained an element now, central bank digital currencies. Central bank digital currencies are coming definitively. The G7 has already said it. They're there. The key thing about central bank digital currencies is not, okay, it's a currency. It's from the central bank. No one cares. Key thing is programmable. Programmable is the key word, right? It means that the government defies what you can spend it on. It means, in theory, it's a coupon. Right? It's a coupon. We will provide you X and you will get Y, i.e. we will provide you £1,000, £200 could go on food, £200 could go on energy, £400 could go on this, and £200 could be for yourself, and it needs to be used by X day. Now, I'm going to piss a few people off here. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Why? For the point that I just stated, and it's exactly why the governments are doing it. We'll move on why it's good and why it isn't.
That's how the States has done benefit for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. It's made a generation of weak people, right? Generation of weak people that are spoon-fed, and you're still going to feed them, but you're going to do it in a more efficient way. What's wrong with that?
Well, they programmed it, though. They make it so you only can spend it on food and things for your kids, and that you cannot buy cigarettes and alcohol with it. So when I came over here, like, people just get the benefit and they can spend it on whatever the fuck they want.
So, yep, in the UK.
And I've always been like, well, they should do what they do in the States, and you only should be able to buy food and baby food and diapers and all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think if you're taking money from the government, I honestly think that's fair enough in a way. But then when I go, wait a minute, are you going to do that to me with my money that I earn?
This is where we go. This is where we move on. So this is where the issue arises. So that's all good, right? Fine. From your average Joe on the street that's taking money from the state that isn't providing, then alas, I get it. That is
I agree. Yeah.
And then we go one step further, right? One step further. Okay, you always want to say you can only eat certain foods as well.
Yeah.
Why? Well, if you're going spending all your money on Jack Daniels and McDonald's, you're going to be a burden to the NHS or the state because you're not going to be as healthy. The statistics show, and again, it goes back to data. Remember, we're in a technological world now. You know everything about these people, the statistics to say, if someone is eating McDonald's every day and drinking Jack Daniels for breakfast, that they're going to cost more money on the state. And we're giving the money to you, but we're giving the money to you to cost more money on the state. No. So all these points make sense. And this is where it comes in and why you're saying you're worried about, is it going to happen to me? And that's where the change in the political system and structure or a whole capitalist structure comes into place. The problem here is because the last 50 years, we have lived in a society which is entirely built on debt. And the reason why this whole change in financial system is occurring is for the reality is that because it has to, it can't sustain itself for any longer. The spoon feeding can't sustain itself for any longer because, for example, I did a really great TikTok on this. It's that pensions, right? We're getting older, and the cost of living is going higher, and the government is supposedly going to guarantee pensions for people up to the age of when they die. So what, you retire at 65 and you live to 100. And all of the tools that previously, 20 years ago, we had to invest our money in, this 20 or 30 years ago, to grow, essentially pensions are, quick one, pensions are invested into specific assets, fund, bonds, equities, normally inside the country that they're in. So if you're in the UK, for example, where I'm from, the majority of pensions going to be invested in UK gilts or bonds, UK debt, and UK equities. If the country's not growing, then those funds aren't growing, and therefore the pension pots aren't growing, but yet you've got an aging population and inflation going up and up and up. How are these people going to live? The government then can't provide the amount that is required to fund its society. So the system is already set to fail. The governments already know it. They look at the deficits on the pensions and are like, oh shit, how on earth are we going to be able to fund for the people? And that's the case in all Western societies because it's been built on debt. So they know they have to change it, right? It's not a case. This is why, because I knew these basics 2 years ago, I already saw it on day one. I already knew these things. We already knew the financial system was going to collapse. We didn't know this I didn't know this 2 years ago. I knew this 10 years ago.
Yeah.
15 years ago, because when the financial crisis happened, it was all a case of what should have happened then is what's happening now.
Exactly.
But they didn't have a plan for it then.
Yeah. I think they did. I think this has all been in plan for a long time.
Yeah, I know what I'm saying. They didn't have a plan for it in 2008.
Yeah.
But they do, yeah, obviously. And the last few years is, what are we going to do to be able to ensure that we stay as the global superpower? Well, no longer that's going to be the United States. It's going to be collective of the United States and its allies, right? Yeah. I think we're safe to say, and at least the media are enough to potentially give us that idea that there is potentially this two separate worlds right now. That's fine. Okay. Let's go back to the financial system and everything. So we know that it needs to change, and we know we now have a technological driven era, technological advances that be able to make the world more efficient. Okay. But we also know that we may not be able to live in this debt-based society anymore. And that is where things get scary. Mm-hmm. When you think about it, for the majority of people in the West, how do they survive initially? I know myself, took out credit cards, defaulted on them as well in the beginning, struggled. And actually, guess what? Happens to more than half of people. That's what happens. That's the reality. This doesn't, to me, it's not, it's just normal. And the governments know this. It's just, they just need to keep the can moving, keep it moving, keep it moving, keep moving. Okay, so we decided now that we're no longer going to do that for you. So you no longer can get access to extra liquidity through loans and through credit cards. So it now means what you're going to find is the middle class is going to shrink.
Yeah.
So people that are like, the easiest example, I suppose, is to move to London. When I moved to London when I was 21, took a credit card. When I moved to Dubai 8 years ago, I took a loan. Whatever, right? This is exactly what I did, right? Yeah. I had the ability to do it. It gave me the opportunity to potentially find more opportunities to be able to provide myself with a higher level of living. Those opportunities won't be available anymore. Mm-hmm. That's the reality. Yeah. So there will be a larger amount of people stuck in the lower class, which will be provided by the state. And it'll be far more difficult to get jobs because a lot of the jobs are going to be taken by AI anyway. That's where the world's going. Technological advances and AI advances, this isn't like slow and steady year by year. This is exponential.
Yeah, it's exploding.
So year by year is like the difference of what we would consider in 10 years in years gone by. So you look at, okay, 15 years ago, or at least 15 years ago, 2007, or just about had Facebook then, didn't we? Look at what Facebook was like then. Okay, well, now what's astronomical changes. Times that by 10 in the next 15 years.
Yeah.
And then just explode to think, whoa, we're going to be living in a different world. Because we have to. Firstly, we have to, because the old system has come to an end. but we're now going to use the tools that we have to improve a new society. But that means that a lot of people aren't going to be able to live the way they wanted to live before. So it's more about, I think it's actually an acceptance that it's going to happen, right? Now, yes, there's going to be some backlash in some way or of course there is. And to the level of how the agenda ends up to how far that goes, I don't know. They might say we want to get to here, but they only get here and then they get to there eventually. Who knows? But I think if you're accepting of, okay, this is the way the world is going, and the reasons that I just explained to everyone, they're very clear, and once you understand it, what I just explained to everyone is not rocket science, right? It's simple pieces of information connected together to make people understand, okay, the world needs to change. And because the world needs to change, it means I'm not necessarily going to get to live the quality of life in a certain, or the extra benefits I had, shall we say, in the Western world as I did before. Okay, fine. Then the answer is, what can I do to give myself the best chance of still living that life, or an even better one, an even better life than what I did before? Why? Whenever there is any transfer of wealth in any point in history, wherever there is any level of volatility, there is opportunity. And it's just about being awake to that. So I think the key thing here is, and it goes back to the beginning of what I was saying, is if I don't get angry about these things, right? The only thing I get angry about is don't lie. Don't give me BS. And I go back there and insult my intelligence. I'm not going to get angry about it. I'm going to look at all the pieces of information. I'm going to go, okay, I understand where the world is going. Okay, what am I going to do about it? The only thing we have control of in this world is one thing. It's your own actions. No one else. I'm not going to blame anyone else down the street. I'm not going to go and blame Klaus Schwab. I'm not going to go and blame Jacinda Ardern. All right, they've all got their own place, whether I like them or not. The only thing I can control is my actions. And my actions are based on my beliefs. Okay, so what do I do? Now, what do I want? Okay, well, I want to live a good life. I still want to build what I want to build. I want to live the life that I want to lead. How am I going to do that? Okay, well, I'm going to educate myself, understanding already that if you're going through a generational change at any point in time, that there's going to be opportunities which can potentially improve my life. Okay, so what are you doing? Well, Nath, you're just being smart. Okay, that kind of makes sense. I think we've known throughout history doing that's a good idea, or rather than being dumb. That's it. And that sounds like it's pretty patronizing, but it's not, again, it's not rocket science. Okay, cool, fine. And this is which goes back to what I say when Klaus Schwab doesn't seem to lie. It's like, no, he's telling you everything. This is where you want to go. Okay, there might be backlash, but he's telling you everything. Let's say not everything. And that's everything. Where there's the grey areas. But I don't believe that he's lying in anything he's saying.
But it's all on the website.
Yeah, no, there's this, it's this keywords. The keyword's lying. It doesn't mean they're being direct or whatever, but where there's many examples of politicians which turn out they already knew these things at certain periods of time and they were lying because they're nodding their heads. They're not, just do what's told.
So what are some opportunities? This is how I think I found you, was XRP, because I am obsessed with XRP. I don't know if that's the right thing. And I think that is the way of the future. And I have some clients that are worth billions of dollars who say, go hard on XRP.
Yeah.
So I listen.
Explain why. Okay.
Yeah, explain.
So this goes on to our banking system again. The problem is, and why we've had to carry on with the system that we currently have, is if it went wrong, the system would collapse overnight. You've seen small examples of it. In the UK, it happened to like a bank called Northern Rock. It's happened in countries where basically people go to try and get their cash out all in one go in a certain period of time, and they can't. Why? Because we use in our banking system, it's basically in any other world, it'll be a Ponzi scheme. We use a system called fractional reserve banking, where essentially the money you put into the bank, a deposit into the bank, is lent out 10 times to other people, and it's working in cycles. What brings more money into circulation. So it means the bank doesn't actually have your money. Okay. So if we're going through this cycle when everyone at a certain point in time goes to try and get their money out, and then let's go through the points of what we're already seeing in the world: increased energy bills, food shortages, X, Y, Z. But Joe Biden, for example, saying you may experience a cyber attack. Well, if we experience a cyber attack and there's no electronics, what is everyone going to do to try and get their cash? They're going to rock up to the bank to get their cash out. The bank doesn't have your money. It has a certain amount in the bank. They only have to keep up to 10% generally throughout the world. So they only got 10%. All right. So if 20% of people come to draw all their money, they ain't going to be able to take it out.
That was the Great Depression, right? That's how that all happened.
Right. It's happened throughout history, right? So what you're going to need, and this is why it's been delayed, is a solution for when that occurs. There's something else in its place that covers what we'd call here, that run on the banks, a liquidity crisis. All right. So two things. What you look at XRP as at the moment is, okay, it actually speeds up the process of payments at any given time, right? It means everything is immediate, near enough, and the costing of it is next to nothing. Okay, awesome. So therefore, it potentially gives us the opportunity being cashless if everything is online. But the liquidity element of it, the extra element, is if there was a price of XRP, so to speak, and it was at a fixed amount of it, then the argument is then it could cover every given dollar out in the world at any point in time. So if you hold XRP, and that's what happens to cover the liquidity crisis, they use XRP to do that. The price of XRP could go from next to nothing to...
What's your projection?
Yeah, I don't know, because you have to look at what all the given circumstances that would occur. That to me, there could be there's multiple elements here, because you've got political elements in different countries. Are Russia and China going to want an American-based company's currency running the world? The whole point here is you were looking at a new global currency. Do you want it to be, yes, XRP is not Ripple, but it is part of Ripple in some capacity. Okay, that's an American company, which has massive ties to the US government if you go digging around, and massive ties to the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
All right. Do you think China are really going to want that?
China's part of the World Economic Forum, though.
That's a very interesting thing as well, isn't it? That makes
and they're his poster boy of how to be a politician.
But then okay, then my answer to that is that not because what China are already doing is what the World Economic Forum is trying to promote?
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. Like, most people don't even know about the social credit system.
China have made it work. There's no denying it. They brought the majority of their population, which is 1.3 billion people, out of poverty in the space of 30 years. That's amazing. Yeah. And they're making their country work efficiently. The reality is they got it. All that happened is the West decided for so long they're arrogant enough to think we do it better, which goes back to the point you said, communism. Because there is an element in what you said there, which was arrogance, like communism. The argument is, even though Chinese have got what they call state capitalism, comparable or whatever, but they made it work, right?
Yeah. So they introduced capitalism, right? Yeah. So they're not purely communists anymore.
Not purely.
But they have the social credit system. Like, most people don't realize what happens over there. If you say something like on social media against them or against the government, not only do they punish you, but they punish your family. They punish your friends. The control is unbelievable.
I think that is a problem for the society here right now, because, coming from me, it's like, as we've already explained, if I feel something is, like I said, if I feel like I'm smelling BS, I'm going to say it. Don't insult my intelligence. For about the 5th time I've said today, and it keeps occurring. That is a problem. Why? Well, that's because I've been indoctrinated into the current system. That we're an educated nation that says, well, no, we go what is considered right in our society. What is considered right in our society and what the government does are two different things, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't tell us what they do. Like I said, I'm open enough. Government, tell me what you're doing. I'm all good. I know. I'll look at what reasons why you do it. But it doesn't necessarily mean why it's built into our society of what is. So that's the two things. There's a big disconnect in our political system and the people, because it's all a facade, isn't it? It's all of, this is the way that we should be. This is the way a society adapts itself. But that's not what a government does. You're from the US, right?
Yeah.
Do you go and bomb people and kill millions of people?
I don't know, but the US does.
Oh, then why? Because in your principles of who you are and the way society acts, is you don't do that. That's what the US went and did in Iraq and Afghanistan and multiple other places.
But it's not about what's right. It's about the military industrial complex and how that is how the US government goes around.
Okay.
Dominate the fact.
In the system we currently have right now, there's a big disconnect between the two. And okay, well, so say la vie, in the system that we're moving into, they want that connect together.
But see, Americans are brainwashed, right? Like every morning you get up, I pledge allegiance to the flag. We are told we are the greatest country, that we're just trying to save the world. We're just trying to help people. And it's not until you travel that you go, wait a minute, like not everybody loves us and we're fucking assholes.
Yep.
So, yeah, and what we're doing isn't right.
The main point is foreign policy, isn't it? When you go to other countries and you realise, and I'm from the UK, I think we're the number two behind the US. So we follow closely in the whole foreign policy thing. Basically, we're like your little brother. Yeah. That's basically it. And as an American citizen, as a British citizen, and you start to understand what has been done, you're like, yeah, actually, okay, it's been the benefit to the people of my country that you've done these things, because why have they done these things? To continue to make sure the country that you live in lives at the level that it's living at, right? That's right. That's the reality.
Petrol for those V8s.
Exactly. And that also links to, if we go down the avenue of petrol and why we're now moving away from petrol, it's because of climate change, inverted commas. Is climate change an element in the world? Yes. Is it being over-publicized? Absolutely it is. Of course it is. Because it's part of the agenda.
But was petrol causing climate change? That's the question, right?
Yeah, well, and the reality is, I'll sum it up in 2 sentences, and I realised this year a little bit more, is that it's just not possible to go around and try bombing countries to try and take their oil anymore. Why? Because when you go into a country, and I use the example of a place in Europe this year, you go into that country and you're against an opposition. What does the opposition do? They don't go into the country and fight a war with you, but they will fund the other side to make sure what we call in English cock block, right? They're just getting in there and making sure that you don't get your succeed. So all you've got is the superpowers going into these countries. They go in, and then the other superpower comes in and makes sure you have the funds aside to make sure you can't get the result you want.
Yeah, but it's also about bringing Putin down, though, too, isn't it?
Yeah, in some element. But the point is that they realise that actually this is not the way anymore. Going and bombing countries. Well, that's good, right? That's good. That's a good way of looking.
So we'll support other people to do it.
So we'll do things in a different way rather than going in and bombing countries. Okay, fine. So we've come up with a different way of doing it, which is far more human, or so to speak. And we've got to accept the way the world is going to work. But like I said, it all comes down to you as an individual and what you're going to do. That's it.
But I think it's also about control, right? Get everyone on an electric car. The grid can't handle it. Sorry, you can't charge your car today. You can't drive anywhere and do you want the planet to heat up and you want to kill all the people and do this?
Okay, so the control element is obviously there for sure. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And I think what cued me when you were saying that is the problem. I think it'll happen in a cycle. I think they're not going to be able to control people immediately. Why? Because people are waking up so fast. I think the media as we know it right now can no longer exist in 10 years. But no one's going to believe it. Who's going to believe the BBC and CNN and all these news channels that exist now? No one.
CNN is imploding.
Yeah, so all of them in some capacity. I think the right-sided channels in the US right now are actually winning slightly because they have this hero in Trump that clearly just wants to work against the establishment. And because
he though?
They've actually got it. Wow, yeah, good question. But that's what's represented, which gives them this angle away from all the BS that's going on. And obviously they're fighting against it. But if let's just look in the core of everything, all these channels that are representing what we're seeing right now, day by day, they are losing more and more of people from behind the scenes believing them. Because actually the majority of people that watch those channels are the elder generation, which natural processes, elder generation will die out. They become less relevant to society as well, because if any issues are actually occurring, they're not the ones that are going to be causing the trouble. So you're looking at this generation of now as millennials, right? So I'm a millennial. You're a millennial,
No, I'm a
right?
Gen
So,
X.
all right, okay. So Gen X, even Gen X millennials, but Gen Zs and millennials right now, they don't believe the media.
No.
Anyone that has a right mind don't believe in it. Why? Because all that happens is anyone with a brain or anyone, let's not call it with a brain. That's a bit patronizing. Let's say anyone that comes across information and they look at that information and they go, oh, this is interesting. And then the natural thing, when anyone says this is interesting, what do you do? You dig a little more. Yeah, you dig a little more.
Not everyone does, though. That's the thing.
But you don't need to. They don't need to. Because we live in a world, we still have this thing in our world where you rock up with your mates around a table and you start to explain things. And they go, yeah, whatever. But then there'll be a cue that they see, which has been given to you already, but then is cued through social media that they come across. It won't take much and it'll question them again. And the more BS that they are fed, the more they will start to question. It's a domino effect of people giving different small cues to make more and more people be awake. The more BS that's out there, the more people wake up and they realize, and because of social media, it's rife. I know when I go through my social channels, there's a different piece of information that I come across, which I need to analyze every day, more than one, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, that's because of what I'm viewing and that's what an algorithm tells me. But it doesn't take much when, with curious pieces of information, something that is interesting, people watch it. If you're watching something on CNN says, oh, there's a flood this week in this place. Okay, there might be. Do you sit there and watch it? No, you flick through to the next one. But there's something which is different, a different opinion of something or other. It becomes interesting because it's not something that's the norm. And then what that does is just open up new cues for you to be able to see it. You're the psychologist. This is what occurs, right? Someone views something, it moves on to the next piece of information, and the technological algorithms that work with it will just point more and more people in this direction of not believing what the media tells us. So if the media can't control the narrative anymore, what happens then? Well, that actually means that the public starts to take control of the narrative themselves a little bit more. So that's good, because guess what it should mean is, back to what I said about 1,000 times, less BS, because it should bring people out. Like I said before, the World Economic Forum, I believe, just don't get the message across to the people that well, or not at this stage anyway. Maybe we're still, I don't know how far we are along in this process, but maybe it will give an opportunity when that time occurs, when there's more and more people not agreeing to this. It's actually, all right, well, show us why this is so good. You've come up with these great things. You're the majority of people, the minority, the small amount of people, these great ideas to make the world a better world. And we've explained all these things that have gone wrong. And by this time, when this happens, a lot more would have gone wrong. We haven't even started yet. We haven't even scratched the surface. If you thought COVID was a pain in the arse, you haven't even got anywhere yet. Honestly, it's going to come and it's going to come up. And all these experiences that will occur, okay, we'll get to a point and say, okay, well, what is your view for the future and why you think it's going to be better? Why? What are you going to give me? How are we going to do it? It becomes a negotiation almost, right? Because in some capacity anyway, that's the way, and that is the way it should be. A single person or a small amount of people shouldn't decide the way millions of people live their lives. There has to be give and take, of course. If you have to be honest to say that,
excuse me, sorry.
West, no worries, particularly the West, we've basically robbed off everyone else for the last 50 years, and we've got a free ticket by printing debt. Yeah. You know what? All right, I get it. Fair enough. Yeah, you're right.
So what do you think's coming? Like how, like the Vatican has just recalled all their funds, want everything back.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
What do you think that's about?
Collapse in the financial system.
Yeah. So what does that look like?
I would say there will be in some capacity a run on the banks. That's where it will happen in some way. You have to add up all the pieces of information, how they're going to do it. How will it happen? Yes, there's rising costs, but could it be a cyber attack? I think that could be a big element. Some power issues. Could it be a war? That could be an element of it. If you look at the principles of changing world order, Ray Dalio talks about how that is the last part of it before there's that change. And we are experiencing that. I think, and again, putting all the cryptocurrency points in place, the regulations, XRP we talk about as potentially being the savior, so to speak, and how this can potentially go through. Once those, you look for those dominoes, and once all those dominoes are in place or close to being in place, it's ready to happen.
Because it's ready to go in November, XRP and that whole ISO 2020.
Once that's in place and that supposedly works and everyone's in the, you've already seen that BlackRock, that's a big one there. BlackRock's put in place where they can move money into cryptocurrency. They're going to want to move their investors' money out of existing stocks into different places. This is where you're going to see stock markets collapse. And when these stock markets start to move money away, there's going to be all these derivatives that have been utilized, which was supposedly should have been stopped really after the financial crisis. They're going to see them all these banks collapsing, and it's just going to create a domino effect. It won't take much when all these money is moved around away from the existing system.
So what can people do? What's your advice? Or no, let's not give any advice, right? I'm not a financial expert. What are you doing to protect yourself? Or what would you advise a friend?
Yeah, I'm already thinking about the future. I think you've got to look at where the world is going. My business that I'm building is thinking about the future. So the business I'm building is a social site where creators can monetize in all verticals, utilizing their following, so that when people spend money, the creator earns money. Why am I doing that? Because people are going to find it very difficult to earn cash. That's the reality. They're going to need to find different ways. And if we have any level of lockdowns or issues where you can't go and work, all these things, we're going to want to be able to find a way to earn money. Well, okay, create content. And you can earn not just through your vertical, through others. That's what I've done personally. I'm already thinking about that. And I've used the tagline of making the creator the stakeholder. Yeah. So like stakeholder capitalism through the creator system. So your average Joe on the street can earn money. So that I'm building that. But
what would you do to protect yourself in the short term? Look, the average person's going, well, what the fuck can I do?
On the street, what you're doing, you're two things. Obviously, if you're not thinking of the future and you're just thinking of the now. Personally, I wouldn't have money in the bank right now. I think it's more safer under your mattress. I wouldn't, and I never at any point up until this stage would I said it's safer under your mattress. Obviously, it's silly. That's what it is. But it's only a matter of time. If the hypothesis is that the banking system is going to collapse, and we're in agreement with that, then your money is definitively safer in your home than it is in the bank.
Well, New Zealand, it's not insured at all.
Yeah, but then it's a case of, okay, if this occurs, maybe it's the case of at this point, we have to switch to the new financial system. This is where we switch to central bank digital currencies. And this is why these are all in place. So there's going to be that period of time where whether that's 1 week, 2 weeks, 1 month, 2 months, where people are going to be,
But do you think they'll just say, whatever you had in the bank here, we'll give this to you in this?
We could switch that in. Yeah, we'll now switch it across into a different currency. Potentially XRP could be that or whatever at this price. And it could. Yeah, I think that could happen. That I have to theorize on this because I'm not going to necessarily make the decisions at that point in time. But I think if it's going to cause a hell of a lot less backlash, so to speak, if it's just going to be converted into a different way, and it will be just masked in a way. Okay, unfortunately, we're going to give it to you, but it's in this way now, which is controlled in a certain capacity.
Programmable. You've had enough beef.
Have
some crickets.
Whatever it may be. So
what coins do you think? What are you investing in when it comes to crypto?
XRP.
And that's it.
For now, yeah. I think obviously you have to look at, there's several which I basically look at, right? XLM.
Yeah, that's
XDC.
The other one I'm looking at.
But these are all ISO 222 coins, which all could be in that element.
Compliant.
And then you've got the two big ones, Bitcoin and Ethereum. I think actually, the problem with these two is I think you should, from personal experience and thinking, is that, okay, you should have money in it, but actually you should also have the expectation that it could go to nothing. And the thing is I don't believe that with XRP. I don't believe XRP can now go with all the information that's there, even though they're the ones with a lawsuit, can go to zero. There's too much linked to government the World Economic Forum, there's too much data to say that this is going to go to zero. That's it. That's my simple hypothesis. If I was a lot richer than I am, I'm a startup founder. I may understand finance very well and understand all the financials, but I put all my money into my technology company. That's my honest thing. So if I was in a position to say, okay, I can be a bit more, I can look at across lots of different things. I could say, okay, yeah, Bitcoin, yeah, you should have some there because it's going to be an alternative. There's going to be a lot of angry people in the way the world works. They're going to want an alternative to the establishment system, shall we speak, which the establishment system will be XRP. That's, I think, or it has a high likelihood, let's say, I'm not going to say will, has a high likelihood of being XRP. So if you're going to be anti-establishment, you're going to be like, okay, well, I don't want something that's centralized. I don't want someone in control. I don't want someone saying you can spend my money on whatever you want to spend my money on. Okay, you're going to go this side. So, I think, and it's maybe we're going to be living in two different types of world. I don't know. Again, for me, I just look at information and I make my decisions. I try to I try to lack emotions as much as possible, look at things logically, understand. Well, I think the key thing is rather than just go, oh, rah, 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 when something's not the way you like it or it's what you've been used to, it's like, okay, the first question is why? And then, okay, is there a logical explanation? Okay, yes. All right, but I think like this as well, you need to understand this. Okay, where can we meet in the middle? Well, I think that's got to be and that will be, I think, in some certain terms of how things will eventually work out, because the backlash will come from the people. So it's about how much of that agenda can really come to pass. I think the first part is the financial system has to change. That's going to happen because it has to. We've already explained it has to. Beyond that, of how far that new system is going to go and how wacky we want to get with our theories around everything, all right? And the reasons why other things have occurred over the last 2 or so years, and why on earth people need to keep getting vaccinated left and center, or all these different things on why all these things occur. We can get as wacky as we want with it. And
have you seen Jared Kushner's new latest thing that he came out and said?
Oh no, what did he say?
He said, because he's very much engaged with the World Economic Forum, and he's got a new book, and he's just come out and said that he'll be the last generation that doesn't die, or the first generation that doesn't die, and that they are going to live for.
He's in his 30s, isn't he?
Yeah, but that goes into, because the whole other thing with the World Economic Forum is transhumanism.
Yeah. Yeah, and then again, you're going for an entire societal change. Like some people just won't accept it. No, it's not right. It's not right. It's not human. It's not this. It's not that. It's like, okay, I just look at everything from a logical perspective. I'm not going to get emotionally attached to a situation. I'm going to look at reasons why potentially things can be done. Do I believe you should have conversation about everything? I think you need to have conversation about everything. It's unfortunately, I would love to say that the mainstream media tells you the truth. And I would love to say that what they're telling you is the way it is, and it needs no further discussion. But unfortunately, when something stinks so much as BS and you consistently see lies upon lies, and it doesn't take much to tell you that, and you see agendas at play, you have to say, okay, no, everything has to be questioned. And if you want to try and silence me because I'm questioning something, well, then unfortunately you're only showing guilt, right? Yeah, that's a problem. So for me, it's like, okay, no, everything should be questioned. But at the same time, we shouldn't get angry and annoyed. We should understand why. Ask why. What it might be the case that we've gone through this whole period of time. It might be COVID was all bullshit. Could be, but I'm not going to get angry about that. I'm going to go, why? Now, just give me a logical explanation. Why? Give me why. Tell me why.
So they can crash the economy and bring in the new financial system.
Well, that would be a really good explanation, theory, right? But argument to say, can you say we're going to crash the economy? No, because that would cause too much backlash from even the people in high powers. Even
just a great reset.
Yeah, for whatever reason it may be. I'm hoping eventually it'll get to a point, and maybe it'll be the case that we just lose all mainstream media, or we get to a point where we see someone step out or step in and be completely transparent with the people, to a point where it's going to get people annoyed, but they've got to a point where they're waking enough to understand it. And if we can get to that point, I think the world can change into a much more, where at the moment they require division, right? Division, because if you're arguing amongst yourselves, you can do all things in the background.
Yeah.
When this all occurs, and however way it occurs, and our financial system transfers into this new industrial revolution, into this new technological revolution, into this new world, which there are more opportunities, greater and good things. If it's built on the foundations of honesty and transparency, and there's an acceptance from the people that know, okay, you've stepped away, this was a bad system before. You talk about all these young leaders, your Trudeaus and your Ardens. If it's the case that what we believe is that there's a gazillion and one levels of bullshit that's been through this period of time, there is no way they are going to be a leader when this is ended. No way. They can't be, right?
Everybody hates them.
Everyone hates them. I think they need to understand. They may not have thought this, or they may have an understanding they'll be moving into a different role when this is all over.
Well, going to work at the UN.
Yeah, wherever it is. That's fine. That's cool. But it has to be built on a foundation of when the time occurs, comes in. It's built on honesty. It's built on transparency. It's built on no, okay. And it's going to take someone that has the balance of understanding the way the world works, but also understanding people and understanding that, you know what? Yeah, come on, just understand the struggle of many, or the understanding of the, I love the fact I'm speaking to a psychologist, because you understand people in the way they think. Right.
Well, I'm a hypnotherapist, but and a counselor. So yeah, but yeah.
All right. But so you get the coverage, right? You did psychology as your major, right? If you understand the way people think, you can get a lot done, because you can put yourself in the right cues to understand that person and why they're going to feel a certain way. And if you can relate, and honestly, I do believe, and I've always believed this, is the best way to relate to anyone is just being honest. Honestly, I feel like that. The reason why I've been able to work with so many people throughout my career and thing is you won't ever catch any BS from me. I'll say how it is. Obviously, sometimes I'm going to, okay, I might offend people, but I'll explain it in a way that I know this may not sound right, whatever. You're considering the person's emotions. You're considering the person's emotion, but you're telling it how it is.
Yeah.
It's the best way. So if we get to a point in society where the leaders, the people at the forefront, are that representation with that honesty and transparency, we'll move into a new era of the way the media is represented and the way the powers that be are represented, that in turn, that can create a better society of people that aren't divided, but are together. Because at the end of the day, even though, you've got to look after number one, the only thing we have is actually the love we have between each other. And then unfortunately, because when you live in a divided society, you just lose that thought process. And
we lose our power.
Yeah,
because we're strong together, right?
So you take this for now. Okay, I think we have to accept that there's going to be this division because it's been done on purpose. It's been put there. Okay, so we lose the division. The division will happen and occur, but as long as we can come back together and take the world forward in the way that we want it to be in some capacity, and it could be that the way that World Economic Forum sees the world in some capacity is the best way for it. But you have to have the collective people on board with that. And the best way to do that is be straightforward. So I think there is this disconnect, and perhaps that's what there needs to be now to get where the agenda needs to get to. But it's got to come back to that connect, because otherwise there's just going to be a humongous disconnect in society. And if there's a humongous disconnect in society, I don't believe the new system can work. That would be my honest thing, because what would happen, and this is what, to be honest, right now, if the people decide so much, this is ridiculous, right? This is ridiculous. What's going on with the energy? What's going on with this? All these things that are going on. There's no point in protesting on the street. What's that going to get done? Honestly, look, what? You're going to march down the street, 100,000 people. What's going to get changed? oh, they'll take it out on the news for a week and then it'll be.
They don't even put it on the news.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's not going to do anything. So the only way you could actually do anything right now, if people collectively come together, is actually rock up to your government and overthrow it. That's literally
Sri Lanka, yeah.
Right, exactly. So that's an example. Literally rock up and overthrow it and make sure you've got the right people in place. And you have to bring a collective together. Now, the places where you have enough educated people to do that, we're already indoctrinated to not do that.
Yeah.
The only place where there's an argument that can occur is, my friends, your country, the United States, where they have the ability, they have enough educated people to be able to put in the right positions, and they have the right to bear arms to be able to go and to cause a few issues in the first place. Now, This is a really interesting one. I never, ever believed in guns, ever. I thought, I've always been on the kind of side of, it's ridiculous. Why do you need a gun? Why do you need it? Why is it there? Not until this year, when I realized, you know what, when you get to that stage of exactly the reason why that thing was put in place, of the thing is to stop tyranny, because we've not gone through it, it's like, oh, it's ridiculous, because you are thinking about anything but tyranny, right? You're just thinking about, you don't want more people being shot in society. You don't want people dying in society. Thousands of people, if not hundreds of thousands of people have died in the United States because there's been guns. Yeah. But when it comes to this point in time, it's the only thing that potentially can stop someone completely taking control of what you decide to do.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting concept that like gives me whoa, I never thought like that. And it wasn't until this year I go, oh, wow.
You get it.
Wow. I never considered it. I don't know what your side of the thought process is there, but that was my thinking. It's like,
yeah, my family has a lot of guns, and I was always very anti it. And I moved here, and it's so hard to get a gun here. It's not even funny. Yeah. You like have to go to the police, and they interview you, and they inspect your house, and they talk to your friends, and it's a long, drawn out process.
Yeah.
And then, past a couple of years, I'm like, wait a minute, I see. Exactly well, we study the Civil War in the States, right? And it's about like, you got to be able to defend yourself and blah, blah, blah. So I don't know. I don't think anybody should be able to get them. But what's happening in the UK with power, right? Like most people don't even, I'm telling people about this and they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, the power bills are going, like how many times up are they going?
Yeah. And then it goes back to what we're saying. You're not going to overthrow the government.
But they don't have guns in the UK to do it.
You're not going to do it. How are you going to do it?
Why are they doing that? They say it's because of Russia, but they don't get their gas from Russia. Yeah, so why?
That's BS. That's BS. Why are they doing it? Because it's all part of the whole system, step by step, to achieve what you need to achieve. That's fine. Cool. Okay, so we go back to the point. It's like, okay, well, if the only way you're going to be able to stop it now is by overthrowing the government, and that's why I said, I explained this in another podcast, actually. The way that I called Brits and Europeans is we are domesticated dogs.
Yeah.
Right? A domesticated dog. If a domesticated dog is left on his own for a couple of weeks and he doesn't have access to food, he dies. So what does the domestic dog always do? He's got the ability inside himself to go and bite and go find, but he doesn't. He only looks to go back to where he was provided from. And unfortunately for the West and the UK, we don't have any bite. Like I said, the US, you still have that potential bite because of the guns, right? You still have the bite. But so the only thing is you go back to the government being able to provide it for you at that point in time. That's fine. Okay, that's the way it is. That's what the society has brought into place and where we're at now.
So do you think that's why it's going up the way it is? Because there's no like logical explanation for power bills going from several hundred to several thousand. Like,
and whilst the energy companies are still making massive profits. So the argument would be there, okay, you're a government, stop them from making profits. If they're making losses, all right, I can understand. Unfortunately, this is a situation. No, it's quite darn obvious.
But people are going to have to choose between food and heating their house.
Yeah, so you're a government. You say, well, these are your profits. We're going to take those profits from you to be able to fund the company. You can do it. You're the government. They work under your rules. All right. You don't like it, then don't provide energy in our country or whatever, right? Or we'll take it back. The government's got the ability to do it. They're not doing it, right? It's all
why?
BS, right?
Why?
It's all exactly why. So it's all a stepping stone. And again, there's that element of control of what we need to look at and think about, okay, if we're going into this world of CBDCs, what's the government going to need to be in control of? They're going to need to be in control of food, which we're already seeing. The US is a great example. Convenient that Bill Gates owns nearly half of the entire farmland in the United States, isn't it? And conveniently, he knew that in 2019. Strange, isn't it?
Well, he was part of the whole tabletop exercise of what if a coronavirus hit the country or the world?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Now it's cyber attacks.
Yeah, so, to try and deny that this hasn't been planned is, to me, is just, again, don't insult my intelligence. It's just the way it is. It's fine. Okay, I'm not gonna moan about it. I understand in times that things need to be changed. People are gonna make decisions, and it's gonna get done. All right. It's like you would if you're working in a company, right? You're working in a company. You're not the boss. None of us are the boss, right? None of us are the top of the food chain completely. There's someone in the world, or a very small amount of people in the world that are the bosses. They make the decisions of where the direction of the business is going. Sometimes you got to like it or lump it. You either like it or lump it, or you jump ship to a different company. That's what you do, right? Yeah. And unfortunately, for some people in this instance, they don't have either the balls or the position to be able to jump ship to another company. Right? Like I said, the domesticated dog. If you're the domesticated dog, you're not jumping ship to another company because you're too scared to go anywhere else. Right? And then you don't have any means to be able to go anywhere else. So, yeah. it's just a lot to take in, isn't it, when you really think about it? When you just start talking about it and discussing it, it's like, yeah, but it's just, I wouldn't like, I think some people, I think the main point is to just, out of everything that we talked about, it's just to just accept it for what it is and make the right decisions accordingly. Yeah, exactly.
It's coming.
I'm like,
so prepare.
Exactly. But I think there will be limits for people, right? And even for me, there'll be limits. If there's, like I said, I look at every piece of information, and if it's like, why, and you don't have something for me that answers that why, then you will get a backlash, right? Of course you will. Of course you will. You're not. Everything has to add up. Everything has to be in accordance to what I want in my life. If particularly when you're talking about something that's going into your body that changed the way your body works. We won't go too much into that conversation, because that's the problem with that conversation, is that the reality is there are technologies out. There are patents on technologies that are out there which do many strange and amazing things, let's just say. I don't know why you would want to use those technologies, particularly in a technocratic society, those biotechnologies, but how they will get used, when they will get used, how they will be implemented, who knows? But it makes sense to me. Oh, yeah, well, who knows?
That guy, what's his name from the World Economic Forum? Yuri. You know who I'm talking about?
The Israeli guy.
Yeah. Hackable animal. He's terrifying.
Even when he talks about things, you can tell he's a very smart guy, right? And you can see that he thinks about things in a different way, in a very advanced way. Let's call it that, in a very advanced way. I think he was also extremely naive at the same time.
Mm.
Why? Because he almost seems 100% convinced that there is only a physical world.
Yes, that's very true.
And I think that is extremely naive. I believe that I'm not religious, never have been, ever. But I feel that there is certainly some, and this has actually happened to me in the last couple of years as well. I've thought about things more. There is a level of spiritualism in myself, and where I want to be, or who I am inside myself. And there is also data out there, a lot of data, to say that there is something within us in energy that is something different. Now we're going on to a completely different conversation, but the point is, I feel that he completely disregards anything outside of the physical plane.
Yeah.
And I think that is extremely naive and potentially dangerous.
Well, and I think that's why they want to push this transhumanism agenda, because if you don't believe there's anything else, if you believe it's just, we're just physical animals and we just die and that's it, then you want to try to live forever.
That's the thing. There's already scientific evidence to say that we don't.
But if you don't believe,
it's already quite clear that our energy transfers from somewhere or other into something else.
But if a lot of people don't believe that's it. Or they're atheists. It's like they think it's science-based, but then they want to try to live forever. Right.
Yeah. And for a long time, and maybe I still do, I like the idea of that. That's great. It sounds great. If you don't have any physical feeling, any feeling outside of once you die, you die. That's it. Alas. If you believe that the element there's nothing to do with your soul, your inner energy, whether it's from some other plane, that again, being someone that is very, as you see, yes, scientific and logical myself, I'm like very, very logical kind of guy. The sentence "playing God" comes into my mind, and for a long period of time, I would never even thought that's something considerable. I know it's like playing God. Well, how are you going to play God? But maybe there are these barriers that they're just things that don't add up. And I think despite being very future forward thinking, I think that definitively has a place in society to be able to improve living for all of us. But maybe the question we should be asking ourselves at the same time is, are we becoming just physical beings attached from what we actually are as a person? And I feel in my whole journey myself, feel that learning about myself internally, my own mind, my own spiritual consciousness, right? However you want to look at that, however you want to believe. I don't know how far I will take that. I've read a lot on this as well. Just as much as I read up on finance and all these things, you also have to attune yourself to other questions, right? The other whys. And they take you down areas in what you want to think about. And what's important to you? Well, finance is important to me. Why? Because it means it defies my living being, where I am, what I can do, and what otherwise. Well, who am I? Where am I going to go? Right? That actually probably the two big whys, aren't they? Right?
Yeah. What
your ability can be within your being now, and what you can experience from that, and what actually you can experience internally in yourself, which takes you out of this kind of consumer driven world, right? So I think, well, again, we're going off a tangent. You could talk about this for hours, really, couldn't you? Yeah. But you could. It's an entirely different thing. And I listened to a couple of guys on that kind of stuff. There's a guy called Jason Shirker. He's quite interesting. Yeah, he was quite interesting. I think somehow, and that's very like new age kind of way of thinking, which I hadn't even considered before. But the question, if you're asking whys, again, if you're asking whys, and it's taking you a direction to ask more whys, and something's adding up, and it is adding up to you, and it feels right, and it adds up. And I'm going on my gut feelings on everything else, as well as the data that you collect. And it tells you, hang on, no, there's something there. Then that tells me the Yuri guy who's thinking just one-dimensionally so much that he disregards anything thinking outside of the physical plane. That could potentially, no, it's the way he speaks. It's like, no, there's nothing more than what's in front of you. And when you die,
and we're animals,
and there's nothing else. And again, and that's just physical being, isn't it? Do I believe my physical being dies when I die? Yes. My bones, my muscles, yes, it dies. But is there energy inside me that gets transferred in a different way? Yeah. So what he's talking about is wanting to stay in this physical consciousness.
Yeah, he's wanting to stay conscious.
He wants to stay conscious in the consciousness that he has now, in the physical plane that he has now, to carry on as we are.
But what gets me about the World Economic Forum is they go, for the greater good. And we just need to go into this new world and it's all going to be great. But then at the same time, they call themselves elite.
Yeah.
I don't like anyone who fucking calls themselves elites, right? And that means that you think you are better than other people. Yeah. And I think that, but they think that they know best and that like other people should be put in their place. And they tell us that we shouldn't drive our cars or do things like that while they fly around on their private jets. So it's like, it's one
Yeah.
rule for us.
All right.
Is there anything you want to say in parting?
No, yeah, it was good. It was really fun. Really fun. We should carry on. We'll find a way to carry on from where we are right now.
Yeah. Okay. We can definitely do that. That's good. Well,
All
thank
right.
you for coming on,
Thanks.
and
Bye.
we'll talk soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
No worries. See ya.